Okay, hello everyone. In today's episode, we want to talk very seriously about elite bilingualism and the role of the Common European Framework and how access, privilege, and schooling have shaped our own language learning experiences. We want to talk about bilingualism. We often imagine something positive, opportunities such as working in teleperformance when a call center, success, and intelligence. But according to Mejia, bilingualism is not neutral. It's deeply related to power and prestige and other things that one sees around. So basically, bilingualism are valued equally. Not all types, but yes, some are celebrated while others are not even mentioned. And that's where the idea of elite bilingualism comes in. So, well, today I have some fabulous guests. So let me introduce you to Gabriel. Woo!
Hello, hello.
Thank you, Gabriel. And Geraldine. Woo!
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to me to be here today.
And Santiago.
Hello, I'm Santiago.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, we know that Elite has a lot to do with bilingualism. Different social cues and different economical issues. So in my case, my own schooling, the English was presented as a language opportunity. It was associated with studying abroad, with accessing international knowledge. There are a lot of students from my school that decided, to just study abroad, which in my case, it's not the same because once I learned about the Common European Framework and I got interested in what English was more than just a language, um, I realized that this just generates this standardization, and it kind of makes some issues with people that are trying to learn English and people that already know English. So in my case, and one idea that really resonated with me from Mejia's readings is how bilingualism is deeply connected to globalization and international mobility. That explains that in today's world, languages like English are tied to global markets and international organizations, that the way that they are structured just makes us feel that being better, it's what you have to achieve for in the case of English, which like in unsubconsciously makes us think that English is the best. So in your case, I want to know if learning about the levels of the Common European Framework changed the way that you saw English.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. Okay, in that question, yeah, for me, in my case, I always think that the levels at the same time w- probably will be a problem, but it depends on the person, you know? For example, I think that if you think that your knowledge is like the people can qualify your knowledge about four levels, um, probably will be frustrated, probably will be sad, probably will be like generate like a bad feelings, you know? Because I know that is necessary because in this era, basically, a lot of people don't get the final level as you want, you know. But yeah, probably the thing about like divide everything like levels, probably in my case generate a lot of like bad problems, you know. That is in my case.
To respond this question, I would like to add something to that question because I think my experience was a little different. At first, I saw the CFR levels as something motivating, like a clear path, but later I started feeling that pressure you mentioned, like your whole identity as a speaker could be reduced to B1 or C1, and I think that connects to what Garcia says about how frameworks like the CFR tend to separate language into fixed boxes, but in a real life, especially in a multilingual communities, language use isn't that clear or measurable.
Well, about me is difficult because, for example, I think in school, I feel like I was bad and I that I had to get good grades or good knowledge and study hard in order to get a good job when I left. Yeah, that's what I thought back then. And it's a challenge to move from one level to the next. So it's scary to think that you may not to be good enough.
Okay. Okay. According with that, that question that Gabriel told us, in the Garcias and Mejia's work, we found a lot of limitations. So let me start. So basically, sometimes we talk about being bilingual as if it's just a magic key for get better jobs. But looking at Garcia's work, I have like realized there are some serious limitations. So for example, the first limitation is the inequality Not all bilingualism is valued the same way. There is a huge gap between elitist bilingualism. For example, the kid people choose inexpensive schools for status, and the bilingualisms of immigrants or minorities, which is often seen as a deficit or a problem that is necessary fix, but nobody get the solution and nobody care about that, you know. And another major limitation is how frameworks like the CIFR force us to keep language in separate boxes. So, according to that two limitation that I found in that works, I have a question for you guys. So it's simple. So the thing is, why is being bilingual seen as a gift for some people but a problem for another people? What do you think, guys?
I mean, I think it depends on the way that people are trying to learn English and what they are, why they are learning English. Because some people see it more as an opportunity and therefore think that it can be an advantage to them. But maybe other people can see me as the death of culture and the death of their indigenous languages and the death of, a very important part of our culture, which is we are very rich in other languages that it's not English or it's not Spanish. We have a lot of cultural differences here in Colombia. And that's like kind of the beauty of being here. So maybe that can be it's depending on why you are learning and what do you want to take from the language.
Okay, what about you, Andres?
Well, I think it's a problem because while some people learn another language and can get well-paid job and so on, other ordinary people, well, at least in Colombia, get a bad job with fewer guarantees. And not only that, I mean, but also in terms of household expenses, I feel that the society is harsh and bilingualism is hard for people who are not bilingual.
I really want to respond that because I actually experienced this very directly when I worked with children from the Wiwa community in the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta. They always spoke their native language, that is Wiwa, and I had to teach them Spanish and English at the same time, so it was very difficult for me. And what I shocked me was that they were already linguistically rich, but the language carries a culture, history, and identity. But socially, the bilingualism was not valued. Instead, they were seen as behind because they didn't speak English or Spanish. So that's when I understood what Mejia means about power and prestige. English is considered as a gift, but indigenous language are often treated like an obstacle.
Okay, okay. So in that case, Andres, if you want, share your opinion. Go ahead.
Basically, in another topic of discussion is how privilege and schooling have shaped our own language learning experiences. Well, if we are realist, honest, many of us in this career believe that reaching level B2 or C1 means success. No, that our value as bilingual speakers could be summed up in an exam, but that's not true. Elite bilingualism is often additive, maybe. Students add English without losing their first language. However, in marginalized communities, bilingualism can be harmful, and this is a problematic, no? Meaning that students are pressured.
That is interesting because we decide to, that B2 or C1 import success for whom? For global market, for universities, for employers. Because in communities like the one that I work with, success looked very different. It wasn't about certificates. It was about maintaining identity while accessing new languages.
To abandon their mother language in order to access dominant languages. So this is where issue of equity and power become important. So it's a question but not respond. Okay, who can maintain their identity while learning English? Who has to sacrifice theirs?
And I think that not everyone has the same freedom to maintain their identity. Students in elite schools often add English without losing their first language, and it is additive bilingualism. But in contrast, in marginalized communities, it can become subtractive, and that is something that Garcia also talks about, and it's the idea that bilingualism can either empower or marginalize depending on the context.
Well, Mejia emphasized that bilingual program must take into account social, cultural, and historical context, not just political and global senses once. So models cannot simply be copied from international settings without adaptation.
And well, that's all for today's discussions. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of this conversation with us. We really hope you enjoyed it and that it gives you something to think about. See you in our next episode.